Have you ever wondered what really happens when both you and the avoidant stop reaching out? No texts, no calls, no checking in, no chasing, just silence. Most people believe this is the end of the story. They think that once two people stop contacting each other, the feelings disappear, the memories fade, and life simply moves on. But human psychology rarely works that way. In many cases, the silence becomes louder than any conversation ever could. It begins changing both people from the inside, even when nothing seems to be happening on the outside. That is why this moment is so misunderstood. It is not always the end. Sometimes it is the beginning of the biggest emotional shift either person will experience. And by the end of this video, you will understand the hidden psychological stages that unfold after mutual silence, why they affect the avoidant differently than most people expect, and how knowing these stages can completely change the way you see your own situation. The hardest part about silence is that it gives your mind unlimited space to create stories. When there are no messages, no explanations, and no signs from the other person, your brain immediately starts searching for answers. You replay conversations, you question your decisions, you wonder if you should have said one more thing or waited a little longer before letting go. This is a completely human response. The mind dislikes uncertainty because uncertainty feels unsafe. It wants clear endings. It wants certainty. But relationships, especially those involving avoidant attachment patterns, rarely provide neat conclusions. This is where many people make a mistake. They believe silence means nothing is happening. But silence is often one of the most active emotional experiences a person can have. Just because someone is not speaking does not mean they are not feeling. Just because someone appears calm does not mean their mind is quiet. Every person processes emotional distance differently. Some express it immediately. Others bury it so deeply that even they struggle to recognize what they are experiencing. An avoidant often learns very early in life that emotions feel overwhelming. Instead of running toward connection during stress, they instinctively move away from it. Distance becomes their way of regaining control. Space feels safer than vulnerability. Independence feels easier than emotional exposure. This pattern is not created overnight. It develops over years through repeated experiences that teach them that relying on others may lead to disappointment, pressure, or emotional pain. Because of this, many people assume that an avoidant is completely unaffected by silence. They think they wanted space, so they must be happy now. That conclusion may sound logical, but psychology tells a much more complicated story. Wanting space does not mean wanting permanent disconnection. Choosing distance does not erase emotional attachment. In fact, when external pressure disappears, something unexpected often begins happening beneath the surface. Now think about your own experience. At first, silence probably feels unbearable. Every passing day seems to stretch endlessly. Your emotions rise and fall without warning. One morning you feel strong enough to move forward. By evening, one memory can pull you right back into sadness. You start measuring time by days without contact instead of moments of personal growth. You begin waiting instead of living. But here is the truth that changes everything. Silence is not only testing your patience, it is revealing your relationship with yourself. When another person's attention disappears, whatever remains inside you becomes impossible to ignore. Your fears become louder, your insecurities become clearer, your habits become visible. This is why mutual silence feels so uncomfortable. It removes distractions. It forces both people to meet themselves. That is exactly why this period has the power to transform you. Pain has an unusual way of exposing what comfort keeps hidden. It shows where your confidence depends on another person's validation. It reveals how much of your happiness has been placed into someone else's hands. It uncovers emotional patterns that may have existed long before this relationship even began. Most people resist this process because it hurts. They want immediate answers instead of gradual understanding. They hope for instant messages instead of lasting growth. Yet psychology consistently shows that meaningful personal change rarely begins during comfort. It usually begins when certainty disappears. When life becomes quiet enough for you to hear your own thoughts, you also begin hearing the beliefs that have been controlling your decisions for years. This is why silence can become either your greatest enemy or your greatest teacher. If you spend every day waiting for someone else's next move, silence becomes a prison. Every hour feels heavy. Every notification becomes a source of hope and disappointment. Your emotional world stays trapped because your focus remains outside yourself. But if you choose to use this silence differently, everything starts changing. Instead of asking, "Why aren't they contacting me?" you begin asking, "Who am I becoming while this silence continues?" That single shift changes the direction of your life. One question keeps you dependent, the other makes you powerful. Real confidence is not built when someone constantly reassures you. It is built when reassurance disappears, yet you continue believing in your own value. Real emotional strength is not proven by convincing someone to stay. It is proven by remaining emotionally balanced even when life refuses to give immediate answers. The surprising part is that this inner transformation does not only affect you. Human beings constantly respond to emotional energy, even from a distance. When someone who was once driven by fear begins operating from self-respect instead, their entire presence changes. They stop reacting from desperation. They stop trying to force outcomes they cannot control. They become calmer, clearer, and stronger. That kind of change is difficult for anyone to ignore. So while the outside story appears simple, two people stopped contacting each other, the inside story is far more powerful. Beneath the silence, two separate emotional journeys are unfolding at the same time. One person may be confronting fears they have avoided for years. The other may be discovering a strength they never realized they possessed. And what happens next depends far less on who sends the first message than on who grows the most during the silence. That is the hidden truth very few people recognize. Mutual silence is never just about waiting. It is about transformation. It is about what the absence of communication reveals that constant communication often hides. And once you understand what begins happening beneath that silence, you will never look at no contact the same way again. The next stage is where the psychology becomes even more unexpected, because what starts happening inside an avoidant after enough time passes is very different from what most people imagine. As the silence continues, something interesting begins to happen. The emotional pressure that once came from constant interaction slowly disappears. There are no arguments to react to, no messages to overanalyze, no immediate decisions to make. What remains is something neither person can easily escape: their own thoughts. This is the point where time becomes more than a calendar. It becomes a mirror. Every quiet day reflects emotions that were once hidden behind conversations, distractions, and daily routines. For someone with avoidant patterns, this stage is often misunderstood by everyone watching from the outside. People expect dramatic reactions. They look for visible signs of regret or obvious attempts to reconnect. But that is rarely how this process unfolds. Instead, everything happens internally before it ever becomes visible. Their mind finally has enough distance to process experiences that previously felt overwhelming. While they may appear unaffected, their brain starts organizing memories in a completely different way than it did during the relationship itself. During conflict, an avoidant usually focuses on protecting emotional space. Their attention is directed toward escaping pressure rather than appreciating connection. Once that pressure disappears, however, the emotional balance begins to change. The stressful moments slowly lose their intensity. Surprisingly, positive memories often become easier to remember. Shared laughter, peaceful conversations, moments of understanding, and simple experiences together begin returning to the surface. This is how human memory often works. As emotional intensity fades, the brain becomes more capable of seeing the bigger picture instead of reacting only to immediate discomfort. At the same time, your own journey enters a completely different phase. The first wave of emotional shock gradually settles. The questions that once controlled every hour begin losing their grip. You may still think about the relationship, but your entire day is no longer built around waiting. Without realizing it, you start creating new routines. You sleep a little better. You focus longer on your work. You spend more time with people who genuinely care about your well-being. Small victories begin adding up, even if they seem insignificant at first. This is one of the greatest psychological shifts a person can experience. Healing rarely arrives all at once. It grows quietly through ordinary moments. Every morning you choose yourself. Instead of chasing certainty, your confidence becomes stronger. Every evening you resist the urge to search for answers that are outside your control. Your emotional stability increases. These changes are invisible in the beginning, yet they slowly reshape your entire identity. Many people believe strength means never feeling pain. The truth is very different. Strength is learning how to carry pain without allowing it to decide your future. It is accepting that some questions will remain unanswered while continuing to build a meaningful life anyway. This kind of resilience cannot be borrowed from another person. It must be developed through experience. There is another important psychological truth that few people recognize. Human beings naturally notice changes in emotional patterns. Someone who once reacted immediately but suddenly becomes peaceful creates curiosity. Someone who depended on constant reassurance but now lives with quiet confidence becomes unforgettable. This is not because they are pretending to be stronger. It is because genuine growth changes behavior in ways that words never can. Ironically, this is often the stage where the avoidant begins sensing that something has changed, not necessarily through direct communication, but through the absence of familiar reactions. The emotional dynamic they once expected no longer exists. There are no repeated attempts to reopen old conversations. No emotional pressure demanding immediate answers. No cycle repeating itself. That unexpected calm creates space for reflection. Reflection is powerful because it cannot be forced. Nobody can argue another person into emotional awareness. Lasting realization happens only when someone reaches it on their own. Silence creates exactly that opportunity. Without external noise, internal questions become impossible to ignore. What did that relationship actually mean? What was gained? What was lost? Which fears influenced important decisions? These questions gradually become louder than the distractions that once covered them. This is why personal growth should never be confused with a strategy to make someone return. Its true purpose is much greater. Growth changes the quality of your entire life, regardless of what another person chooses. It protects your peace from becoming dependent on someone else's actions. It teaches you that your future cannot be built upon uncertainty alone. Think about how many people spend months waiting for one message while putting their dreams on hold. They delay opportunities. They ignore friendships. They stop investing in themselves because emotionally they remain parked in the past. Time continues moving, but their life feels frozen. The greatest cost is not simply missing another person. The greatest cost is missing the chance to become a stronger version of yourself. Life always rewards movement. It rewards people who continue learning despite disappointment. It rewards those who choose discipline over emotional chaos. Every difficult experience carries a lesson, but only if you decide to receive it. Otherwise, pain repeats itself wearing different faces and different names. The silence between two people becomes meaningful only when it creates wisdom instead of endless suffering. Every challenge has the potential to either harden your heart or deepen your understanding. The decision belongs to you. You cannot control another person's emotional timing. You cannot force readiness, vulnerability, or commitment, but you can decide what this chapter builds inside you. That choice becomes your greatest advantage. Instead of measuring progress by whether someone reaches out, you begin measuring it by your own emotional freedom. Can you smile without expecting a message? Can you enjoy your day without checking your phone every hour? Can you believe in your own value even when no one is reminding you of it? These questions matter far more than predicting another person's next move. As your answers begin changing, your energy changes with them. You become less driven by fear and more guided by purpose. You stop seeing silence as punishment and start recognizing it as preparation. Every day spent becoming emotionally healthier is an investment that benefits every future relationship, every personal goal, and every challenge waiting ahead. This is where the story quietly reaches a turning point. One path leads back into old emotional patterns. The other leads toward lasting confidence and inner peace. At the same time, the avoidant may also be approaching a realization that only distance could create. The most surprising part is that this final stage is not defined by who breaks the silence first. It is defined by what both people have become because of it, and that changes everything. The final stage begins so quietly that many people fail to recognize it. There is no dramatic announcement, no clear signal that everything has changed. Instead, both lives continue moving forward, shaped by every decision made during the period of separation. This is the moment when the true outcome is revealed, not through promises or assumptions, but through personal transformation. The silence has already done its work. Now its effects begin showing in real life. For the avoidant, enough time has usually passed for emotional defenses to become less automatic. When someone no longer feels cornered or pressured, they often gain a clearer view of what actually happened. Feelings that were pushed aside because they seemed too uncomfortable can slowly rise to the surface. This does not happen because they suddenly become a different person. It happens because the mind finally has room to process what was postponed. Many people imagine that emotional awareness arrives all at once, but that is rarely how the human mind operates. Understanding develops in small moments. A familiar place brings back a forgotten memory. A song reminds someone of peaceful times. An ordinary conversation with another person creates an unexpected comparison. These simple experiences can unlock emotions that remained hidden for months. They are reminders that meaningful connections leave lasting marks, even when people try to move beyond them. At the same time, something equally important is happening in your own life. The version of yourself that once depended on answers has gradually faded. You have spent enough time rebuilding your confidence that your emotional balance no longer depends on another person's choices. This does not mean every memory disappears. It means those memories stop controlling your direction. They become part of your story instead of becoming your entire identity. That is one of the greatest victories anyone can experience. Freedom is not forgetting someone. Freedom is remembering without losing yourself. It is being able to appreciate what was meaningful while accepting that your future deserves just as much attention as your past. This mindset creates a level of peace that cannot be taken away by uncertainty. Psychology teaches an important lesson about attraction that many people overlook. Individuals are naturally drawn toward emotional stability. Desperation creates pressure. Confidence creates comfort. Fear pushes people to chase outcomes they cannot control. Self-respect allows them to remain calm regardless of what happens next. This difference completely changes how others experience your presence. If an avoidant eventually decides to reconnect, they are not meeting the same person they left behind. They are meeting someone who has developed stronger boundaries, greater emotional maturity, and a clearer understanding of personal worth. That changes every future interaction. Conversations become healthier because they are no longer fueled by panic or insecurity. Decisions become wiser because they are guided by values instead of fear. But there is another possibility that deserves equal attention. Sometimes no message ever comes. Sometimes both people continue building separate lives. Many see this as failure, but that perspective misses the most valuable lesson of all. The purpose of difficult experiences is not always to restore what existed before. Sometimes they exist to prepare you for something better than you imagined. Growth changes your standards. You begin recognizing qualities that truly matter. Emotional consistency becomes more attractive than temporary excitement. Honest communication becomes more valuable than mixed signals. Mutual effort becomes more important than endless guessing. These changes protect you from repeating painful cycles because your expectations become healthier. This is why healing should never be measured by whether another person returns. It should be measured by who you become during the process. Have you learned to trust yourself more? Have you become emotionally stronger than you were before? Have you stopped abandoning your own needs just to keep someone else comfortable? These are the questions that determine real success. Every relationship teaches something. Some teach gratitude. Others teach patience. Some reveal hidden strengths that would never have appeared without hardship. Even disappointment carries value when it leads to greater wisdom. Nothing is wasted if it helps you become a better version of yourself. There comes a moment when you realize that chasing certainty was preventing you from experiencing life itself. You begin investing your energy where it produces real results. You strengthen your health. You develop your talents. You deepen friendships with people who genuinely support you. You create goals that inspire you each morning. Little by little, your life becomes full again, not because someone filled the empty space, but because you did. This shift is powerful because it cannot be taken away by silence, rejection, or distance. It belongs entirely to you. Your confidence is no longer borrowed from another person's affection. Your happiness is no longer waiting for someone else's decision. You become emotionally independent without becoming emotionally closed. That balance is one of the healthiest places any person can reach. Ironically, this is often when life begins presenting new opportunities. People notice authenticity. They notice calmness under pressure. They notice someone who values themselves without needing constant approval. Whether in friendships, future relationships, or personal achievements, this interchange creates possibilities that never existed before. Looking back, you realize the silence was never simply about two people avoiding communication. It became a powerful test of character. It revealed habits that needed to change, fears that needed to be faced, and strengths that had been hidden beneath emotional dependence. What first appeared to be an ending quietly became the beginning of a completely different life. So, what really happens when both you and the avoidant stop contacting each other? The answer is far deeper than most people expect. One journey unfolds through reflection, the other unfolds through personal growth. Sometimes those paths meet again, sometimes they continue in different directions. Yet the greatest surprise is this: the person who wins is not the one who receives a message first. The one who truly succeeds is the person who refuses to let silence define their value, who turns uncertainty into wisdom, transforms pain into purpose, and walks forward with a stronger heart than the one they had before. That is the outcome that changes everything, because once you discover your own strength, no period of silence has the power to control your life again.